Humanity unleashes 900,000 warships after colony's destruction. Prologue: The death of Halcyon Prime. You cannot imagine the sound of a planet dying. Not the roar of explosions, nor the shrieking of collapsing metal. Those are only echoes of destruction. The real sound is silence. A silence that follows once the screams have faded, once the transmissions have gone dark, once an entire world has ceased to be. I was there when Halcyon Prime burned. I watched from the bridge of a patrol frigate, helpless, as the sky was torn apart by enemy fire. I listened as the planetary distress calls filled the channels, voices filled with terror, voices that knew they would never be answered. 12 billion lives. Gone. The Xalvani Imperium did not come to conquer. They did not land troops, did not issue demands, did not take prisoners. They came to erase, and they succeeded. When the attack was over, nothing remained. The cities had been reduced to molten ruins. The oceans boiled away. The lush green forests of Halcyon's surface turned to lifeless dust. And humanity? Humanity did nothing. Not because we lacked the will, but because at that moment we lacked the means. But that would change. Because if the Xalvani had taught us anything that day, it was this: mercy is a weakness. Diplomacy is a lie. And vengeance is the only truth the universe understands. We would not ask for justice. We would deliver retributions. Chapter 1. The Call to War. The news of Halcyon Prime's destruction did not just reach Earth. It ripped through it like wildfire. Every broadcast, every hollow screen, every news channel displayed the same images: burning cities, shattered continents, the hollowed-out remains of what had once been our pride among the stars. There was no debate, no discussion. The decision was made the moment the first screams reached our ears. In the underground war rooms of the United Terran Republic, the High Command gathered. The President stood at the center of the council chamber, her face as cold and unreadable as the void beyond our worlds. Admiral Marcus Voss, Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, spoke first. They thought this would break us. His voice was calm, but his fists were clenched at his sides. They thought we would beg for mercy. A murmur of anger rippled through the chamber. But they do not understand what they have done. Voss continued. They have not crippled us. They have forged us. His gaze swept across the room. They have given us purpose. No one argued, no one hesitated, and so the order was given. Total war, no limits, no restraint, no mercy. Humanity was going to war, and we were going to win. Chapter 2. The Awakening of the War Machine. The galaxy had long underestimated us. They had seen humanity as young, reckless, unprepared for the grand conflicts of the cosmos. They had mistaken our diplomacy for weakness, our patience for hesitation. They were wrong. Deep in the heart of our system, beneath the cold rings of Saturn, inside the hidden shipyards of the Kuiper Belt, a force unlike any seen before had been growing in silence. For decades, we had built in secret. We had watched as other species waged war, as civilizations rose and fell, and we had understood one truth. One day, we would need an armada. And when that day came, we would not be found wanting. Now the time has come to unleash it. 100,000 warships, a number beyond comprehension. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers holding entire fleets within their armored hulls, battlecruisers bristling with weapons that could tear apart moons. At the heart of it all was the Nemesis, the flagship of our revenge. 3 times the size of the largest Xalvani warship, it was armed with technology the galaxy had outlawed, weapons so powerful that their mere existence had been deemed a war crime. But war crimes meant nothing when your people had already been erased. The war machine had awakened, and it was hungry. Chapter 3. The First Strike. The Xalvani Imperium stretched across hundreds of systems, ruling with the arrogance of a species that had never been truly challenged. They had spent centuries crushing smaller civilizations, expanding their borders unchecked. They believed themselves untouchable. That belief ended when our fleets arrived. We did not send warnings. We did not open negotiations. The first attack came at Xal'Torath, one of their primary military outposts. A world fortified with planetary shields, surrounded by orbital defense stations, guarded by an elite fleet. It was not enough. The battle lasted 3 hours. 3 hours before every Xalvani warship had been reduced to wreckage. 3 hours before their planetary defenses failed. Before our bombardment turned their cities to rubble. Before the once mighty world of Xal'Torath was silenced forever. Across the Xalvani frontier, the same story repeated itself. One by one, their colonies fell. Their fleets scrambled to respond. But against the sheer magnitude of our onslaught, they were powerless. The galaxy had called us an upstart race. Now they were calling us something else, a force of nature, a storm of annihilation. The Xalvani leadership sent envoys, desperate to negotiate to stop the bloodshed. We did not respond, because Halcyon Prime had begged for mercy, and the Xalvani had given it none. Next, at the War of Extinction and the final stand, this is just the beginning. In the next sections, I'll expand on the psychological toll on both sides, the deeper war strategy, the breaking point of the Xal'Wan Chapter 4, the War of Extinction. The Xalvani Imperium had reigned for over 10,000 years. It had crushed species, conquered empires, and stood as one of the dominant forces in the galaxy. Now it is being dismantled, not through slow attrition, not through negotiations or political maneuvering, but through fire and death. Our fleet advanced without mercy. Entire systems fell before the Xalvani even knew we were there. Some tried to flee, abandoning their homes, their stations, their worlds, but there was nowhere to run. Every hyperspace lane leading out of Xal'Vani space was blockaded. Every attempt at retreat was met with the cold, unrelenting guns of the Terran Armada. We did not just want victory, we wanted obliteration. The Xalvani sent desperate pleas to the galactic community. They begged the other great powers to intervene, to stop the madness before their empire was reduced to dust. But no one came. Because the Xalvani had spent millennia making enemies. Because every species that had once suffered under their rule watched now with grim satisfaction. For once, it was not their worlds burning. It was not their people dying. And so, the galaxy stood in silence as the Xalvani Imperium collapsed. Chapter 5, The Battle of Xal'Vora. The Xal'Vani homeworld, Xal'Vora, had never been invaded. It was the heart of their empire, the seat of their power, and the most heavily defended planet in known space. Massive orbital fortresses surrounded it, supported by a fleet of 200,000 warships, their last and greatest defense. They had called it the unbreakable bastion. And yet, as the Terran Armada arrived, as 900,000 warships emerged from the void like an unstoppable tidal wave, everyone in that system, Xalvani or otherwise, knew the truth. The bastion would break, and with it, the Xalvani Imperium would die. The last battle begins. The Xalvani fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. Their fleet surged forward, firing everything they had, filling the void with energy blasts, railgun rounds, and missile swarms. But we were ready. We had spent years perfecting electronic warfare, adaptive shielding, and quantum-based targeting systems. For every one of our ships that fell, 100 of theirs were turned into drifting wreckage. We fought not as conquerors, but as executioners. As the battle raged, the Nemesis entered orbit over Xal'Vora. From its forward batteries, planet-cracking weapons emerged. Singularity warheads, plasma bombardment arrays, kinetic impactors the size of mountains. Then, the command came. Burn it all. The fall of Xal'Vora. The bombardment lasted 10 hours, the planetary shields held for 3. After that, there was nothing but fire. Entire cities vaporized in seconds. The great temples, the imperial palace, the towering spires that had stood for millennia, all turned to rubble, and then, the final blow. The Nemesis fired the Oblivion Cannon, a weapon so powerful that it had been banned by every interstellar treaty, a weapon designed not just to kill but to erase. A single projectile containing a controlled singularity descended upon the planet. The surface of Xal'Vora collapsed inward, the core imploded, and then in a blinding flash the entire planet ceased to exist. Where Xal'Vora had once been, there was now only an expanding field of dust and shattered stone. The Xalvani Imperium had fallen. Chapter 6, The Price of Vengeance. And then there was silence. No more warships, no more armies, no more Xal'Vani. The species that had once ruled the stars was now nothing but a memory. The Terran Armada stood victorious. The galaxy watched in horror. They had thought us weak. They had thought us fragile. Now they knew the truth. We were not conquerors. We were not rulers. We were something far worse. We were the vengeance of the forgotten, the fury of the broken, the storm that comes when the stars themselves tremble. And in that silence, as the embers of war cooled, the galaxy asked itself one final question: who would be next?